colorful, creative.
You put it into a,
People are
you
picking
plug it
up on
into a
the three
memory.
colors.
You have a,
Jamaican
you
descent.
have a strip.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Nice.
okay. No, this one. I mean, you have another strip. Don't you have another strip? Shoot.
Whoever gets it first.
I'll put it there. Must be small.
Ladies first, come on.
Yeah, like this last year. What the other one? This one. Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't see it.
I came to connect
I'm
with
drinking
agency connectors, especially Bill and Pride, to gain more resources to spread God's message in different ways to youth, elders, neighbors, and church members as well. Exterior signage, because our church doesn't have exterior signage. And
What she has learned, she learned it back by the scripture. We're still producing young people for God.
All right, let's see your name here.
Gentlemen.
He's a gentleman. Humble. Short to the point. Awesome, awesome. Okay. Are you guys ready to learn?
Yes.
Awesome. So we're going to invite up our first presenter of the day. None other than Mr. Andrew Ashley. Come on up. As you see in your program, maybe I'll let you explain. But I do want to let you know, and I didn't tell you this either, that we do like to ask our presenters a random question that you're going to just pull out of this box and answer for us, just to help us to get to know you outside of your bio, okay? So, when it's folded. Yeah.
What are some small things that make my day better? You guys hear me? Is it turn it on? Yeah. That usually works out. Testing. Well, you guys can probably hear me now. All right. So the question is, what are some small things that make my day better? That's a great question. So I recently, just a few weeks ago, got engaged, right? So I'm engaged, and one thing that every day, like I travel a lot for my job. I'm usually always on the road, either producing things, doing things like this. And so my fiance, she doesn't like that, right? That's not something that she loves. All the time, every day, I just find myself thinking about my fiance and thinking about how she feels at the moment, right? And like I'm always there's this constant anxiety that like she's not scared, but kind of just sad, or I'm not there to help her through her daily problems. She's getting a master's degree in communications at Andrews University. And so anytime I get a call and she sounds happy, she sounds like she's having a good day, it just makes my day great. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm going through, I just feel so great about myself. So I would have to say that what makes my day better is just hearing that she's having a good day, right? So, yeah.
Oh, this is
Yeah, I love it. With some brownie points.
All right, without further ado, Andrew Ashley.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here. And I was just asking some questions, trying to learn the context of this program, this convention, which I think is amazing. I think it's incredible. But just real quick, I saw some people came up and gave some context of who they were and where they're from. But how many of you guys are lay people who just have a passion for communication that are here? Just lay people, you're not necessarily a pastor. Awesome, that's incredible. And how many of you guys are pastors who decided to come here because, like, someone said you wanted to be a better tool for ministry? How many of you guys are pastors? Great. And how many of you guys are just work in communications for your conference? Your church, or work in communication for your church or conference? Okay. Cool, that's awesome. Just to give you a little context about me, I work for the North American Division in the Adventist Learning Community department, and I'm the director of a social media and media organization called The Haystack. We are a media organization that focuses on producing content, blogs, podcasts, films, video series that edify youth and young adults in the Adventist and Greater Christian Church. And so I've been there for about a year now, and I did some things before that, and I'll get into that a little bit. I've pastored, I've done a few different things, and I'll get into that in a moment. But before I do that, I want to tell you guys a little story and go all the way back in my day, in like 2000, and I guess 1 or something like that, when I was like a little jit, right? I was about 8, 9, 10. I don't know, that was a long time ago, right? I'm old. You guys are looking at me like I'm crazy. That's back in my day for me, right? So back in my day, when I was 9 or 10, I actually belonged to the New Life Church in Warner Robins, Georgia, New Life Seventh-day Adventist Church. I was 9 or 10, and I had a twin brother. I had a little sister and little brother. And this was Saturday morning, and I had one of my best friends at the time was this guy named John. And at this moment, as I was like I said, I was 9, 10. It was right after Sabbath school, and I was kind of just hanging out in the lobby, just with my friend John. We were playing around the water fountain, just being kids, right? Just minding my own business. And then all of a sudden, the church doors open, right? And in walked the most beautiful 9-year-old girl I had ever seen. When I was 9, right? That's the context. She was 9, so she's a grown woman now, right? So I see this girl come in, holding her mom's hand, and it's just this whole family, they're visitors, right? This is their first time here. And I see them, and I'm like, man, this girl is beautiful. Like, this is it. This is it. This is my wife right here, you know? I got it. I'm good, right? She's a beautiful woman. And my friend John, this is the crazy thing. My friend John, he saw me look at her. He saw me seeing her. And he mentioned, like, hey, Andrew, by the way, I see you checking this young lady out. I actually know her. See, my family is friends with her family, right? And so, you know what that means, right? How many of you guys ever had like a wingman, a really good wingman and wingwoman? You know, someone who got the connection, someone who's a good friend who can hook it up for you. I was like, all right, John, you're my wingman. That's it. Okay, tell me everything you know about this young lady. I want to know her name, what she likes, where she likes to go for vacation, all the good things she likes in her life, so I can wipe her up. That's my goal in life now. And so Johnson's like, hey, yeah, I got you. I'll tell you everything about her. Firstly, her name was Nicole. All right, okay, cool. Nicole, that's a pretty name. Nicole, Nikki's a nice nickname. That's cool. And he said, yeah, I'll tell you all about her. And now, mind you, in my mind, as I just saw her, she was a 10. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, she's a 10. You know, the youth call it, she was a dime, right? Like 10, get it, right? And so she was just beautiful. She was perfect, right? And I saw her from a distance. I'm like, this woman is just awesome. But then something happened. Then John started to tell me a little bit about her and who she was, right? And what happened was, John would say something like, oh, yeah, she's great. But just never make a mistake, because she's not very forgiving. So you gotta be careful with that. Just make sure you're always doing what you need to do, because she's not a very forgiving person. And you know, I'm like, that's not that great. You know, now she has to be at a 9. She can't be a 10 with that kind of attitude, right? So now she's at a 9, but she's still beautiful. She's still great. And so then John continues to tell me, it's like, yeah, she's great, but also be careful with what you tell her, because she tends to gossip a lot. Like, she's not very trustworthy. So just be careful with that. Like, oh, goodness, man. And so now she's at 8, right? Because she can't be a 10 with that. But you know, I can deal with the 8. That's fine. She's still beautiful, right? And then he continues to tell me more and more. He's like, yeah, you know, she stabbed people in the back. She's done this. She's done that. You know, she burps with her mouth open. I'm like, oh man, this is ridiculous. And the next thing you know, as he's telling me more and more things, she goes from being a 10 to being an 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, until she's like a 1, a 0. And I'm just so disgusted at what I'm hearing about this young lady, Nicole. And I have no interest in getting to know her. So just like that, because of what John told me, this information that he gave me, I have no interest in getting to know her. Now, what was interesting about this is that this family, Nicole's family, became part of the church family. So for the next 6-7 years, this is the thing. I'm around Nicole. I see her interacting with other people. I see her building community. I see other people wanting to know her. But I'm not trying to get to know her because of what John told me. John told me that she's not a good person, so I'm not gonna talk to her, right? So I'm around her. I'm in this context. I'm aware of who she is, but I have no interest in getting to know her.
Well.
And then, I'm 14, I'm 15, I'm 16 at this point, and I remember it's after church this time, and it's potluck time, right? It's time for fellowship dinner, and I walk into the fellowship hall, and there was a certain area of the room. You know, when you're a kid, you have your crew, and you sit in a certain area of the fellowship hall. You know those youth who just hard-headed. Yeah, that's their spot. They're always acting a fool. They're in their right spot over there. And so I had my spot. I had my area that I was always in. And when I came into the fellowship hall, Nicole was sitting in that area. And so immediately I'm a little frustrated, right? I'm like, oh, Nicole was in this area. I don't want to sit there. Why is she doing that? She knows I sit there, right? But then I started to think for a moment. Because all this time, for the last 5 or so years, I had treated Nicole poorly. I had ignored Nicole. I had no interest in getting to know Nicole based off what John told me. And then I began to think to myself, hey, what if, Nicole is right there. It seems like she's trying to make an effort. She seems like a friendly person. She's right there where I'm at. What if I just walked up, took a seat, and engaged with Nicole and got to know her for myself? And so sure enough, I walked up, I sat down as she was in my space, and I got to know her for myself. And I learned a lot of things through that conversation. I learned that, she's not a gossip. In fact, people gossip about her. That was all a lie. I learned that, she's not unforgiving. She just has some things that happen in her life that cause her just to part her ways from other friends. And I learned her side of the story. I learned the greater context. I learned that time when she burped out loud, that was an accident. No big deal, right? And I learned all these things, and next thing you know, she goes from being a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to being a 10 again, right? I learned that she's a wonderful person. She's a beautiful person, and I liked her, and I thought she was awesome. And then I'm 17, I'm 18, I graduate from high school, go to college, I'm still talking, and I get older and older, and we're talking and talking. And today I am happy to say that I am pridefully friend zoned by Nicole. We're friends. We're friends on Facebook. We talk every once in a while. I'm engaged to a wonderful woman named Chelsea, and that's the end of the story. Great stuff, right? So why did I tell this story, right? There's an important lesson to learn from this story. Because here's the thing. We live in the United States of America, a Protestant country, right? And so everyone who lives here is familiar with the Christianity, right? They're familiar with Jesus. They're familiar with this idea that there's this God who came down and died for us, all that good jazz, right? And we even have youth and young adults who grew up in our church, who are very familiar with the doctrines, the teachings, the gospel, and all that good jazz. But we still have this problem in this country where, like, most of the country doesn't believe it. Most of the country isn't going to come into church. Most of the young adults who grew up in the church are leaving the church. So it's kind of confusing because these people are aware that they grew up in this context when they heard about this guy named Jesus, but for whatever reason, they're deciding not to engage with him and build a relationship with him. And I believe, as a young adult, as I am, I have a lot of friends who have left the church. And my understanding is that because there has been a lot of Johns in their life, the devil has used a lot of people, a lot of circumstances to convince them and paint this really negative picture of who Jesus, who God is, right? And because of that, even though they see him, they're around it and all that good jazz, they decide not to engage with it. And what I've seen specifically happen is when in this new age of media, entertainment, specifically social media, the devil has really used social media as a tool, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all these different platforms to really distract and turn the youth and young adults away from this guy named Jesus. And one of my biggest fears is, I pastored for a little bit a few years ago, and one of my biggest concerns was that I felt like my boss and the staff at the church was not meeting the youth and young adults where they're at, right? They would stand at the pulpit, they would preach their sermons, and then they would complain because youth and young adults aren't coming to the church. But instead of doing that, one of the things I learned is like, hey, what if you go to the area where they're at, go to this side of the table where they're at, and engage with them and give them that opportunity to engage with God. Go to social media and use social media as a tool to engage with God. So I'm going to be talking in the next for the next few moments about I'm doing two parts, right? I'm speaking later today at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. I'm going to be going into like some more detail about strategies with Instagram and Facebook, etc. Right now, I'm going to focus on making a case of how powerful social media is. Talking about my own experience and giving some more data and context to back that up. And my hope is I'm going to be like engaging with you all. My hope is that we can learn together and figure this out together. Let me see if I can. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that'll be up in a minute.
Okay, that's fine.
The projector timed out, so it's fine.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, well, let me just go from here while the projector is getting ready. I have a few questions for you guys.
It's coming up.
It's coming up. Wonderful. So there's a slide. There we go. All right. There we go. So on this slide, I have a few dates there. Go over these dates and kind of ask and pick you all's brain for a moment. So the printing press was invented in 1440. So I have a question. I want you to think to yourself, what type of ways has the Christian church used the idea of print to convey the gospel? What are some examples of the church using print, that medium of print, to convey the gospel?
Good word, Bible.
The Bible, obviously. What are some other ways? Literature, right? Like you think about the glow tracks. You think about, I remember growing up, we had all the Joe Cruz little booklets, that Bible study booklets that came, Amazing Facts, right? Has done a great job with that. Maybe magazines as well has been a thing. One of the biggest things, like the Christian world has a huge industry of like publishing books, right? We have millions upon millions of books that deal with theology, theodicy, just spiritualism, and just walking with God and all that good jazz. So that's a way that for whatever reason, maybe it was just like it made sense to the church. Like, oh, we need to take advantage of this media, and so the church decided to take advantage of it, and we have been taking advantage of it for years and years, right? So that's great. The radio was invented in 1895. Now, what are some examples of the Christian world, the Christian church, the Adventist church, taking advantage of the medium of radio?
Joe Cruz.
Yes, Joe Cruz, Amazing Facts started off on the radio. What are some other? Yes, absolutely. Voice of Prophecy. OUBN. Oh, okay. Oh, Oakwood. Yeah, most definitely. I went to Southern Adventist University. New Story Hour? Okay, yeah. I remember growing up on Adventures in Odyssey. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that. That was my jam growing up, man, as a kid. That was my jam. So once again, this is an example of how the church saw this medium, radio, and they're like, oh, it makes sense to use this. The world is using this. The devil is weaponizing this to get ideas and ideologies out there. Why don't we use it to spread the gospel, the three angels' message? And it made sense, right? And we used it, and we're using it today. Television, invented in 1927. What are some examples of television being used as a tool to convey the gospel? It is written, ABN, Hope Channel, Amazing Facts, Daystar. There's actually a lot of networks, Christian networks that have television shows from live streaming sermons to having just random different programs. And even when you think about just the idea of maybe not network television, but just televising content, you know, a lot of us, I remember as a kid, my church, we bought a whole bunch of cameras and we put our sermons on Church Pond, right? Where like we would just live stream it there and put it on there in that platform. And so that's a way of using televising, recording your content and video and putting it on a platform or a network. So once again, this is an example of the church, the world church, Christians seeing this medium and saying like, hey, this is a tool. Let's use this tool to spread the gospel, because once again, the devil is using it and weaponizing it to destroy people's lives. Let's use it to do some good, right? And then you come to social media. And this is kind of a frustrating a thing for me, because, you know, as a young adult, I see firsthand how powerful social media is. And I see firsthand how the devil is so intentional in using it and weaponizing it to destroy other people. And one of the biggest challenges that I face in having conversations with pastors and churches is that a lot of times, for whatever reason, we had the foresight to see all these mediums as being used to do great things, but I guess our posture many times towards social media is that of like, oh, this is a really negative form of media and we don't want to engage with it, we don't need it, we're just going to stand on the pulpit and do our own thing. And that's really concerning to me. And I personally, when I was 22 and I started pastoring, I was told by my pastoral staff not to worry about social media. I was told to not worry about that, focus on just being with the people, preaching from the pulpit. And I pastor at a place where I was the young adult pastor of a whole bunch of youth and young adults. And so I started off just focusing on the people, preaching from the pulpit, doing weekly Bible studies in the dorm. And yeah, you would have like 2, 3, 4 people show up. But what I would really have to do to get people to show up, I would buy a whole bunch of cookies, I would have to buy a whole bunch of cake, and have like these big meals in order for people to really come and engage. And even then, they would eat and they would just kind of leave. They would eat and kind of just leave. And so after about 6 months, I decided to kind of go against the current of what the pastoral staff was kind of doing, and decided to explore, hey, how can I use social media to really engage with youth and young adults? Now let me ask you this. How many of you guys have a Facebook? Okay, great, awesome. How many of you guys have an Instagram? Okay. How many of you guys have a Twitter? Okay, a few. Now, how many of you guys know how to create graphics? Okay, a few. How many of you guys know how to edit video and audio? Okay. So fewer and fewer hands are coming out, which makes sense, right? We're getting into some specific skills. But I want to tell you real quick, and my goal is telling you this story is to convince you not only how powerful social media is, but that you can become an expert at using the tool of social media to win souls. I'm going to tell you this. So I went to Southern Adventist University between, well, I won't tell you the years, but I went there for like about 5 different years, and I graduated with a degree in theology. Graduated with a degree in theology, and my goal was to be a pastor. I loved preaching, I loved talking to people, I loved doing Bible studies, I loved like really conveying the message of the gospel. And so right after I graduated, I got picked up by a particular conference and pastored at a church that had a large staff of people. I actually was the youngest person. I was the only person of color, and it was intimidating, but it was really exciting as well. It was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm really excited to have a big staff, a large community, and it actually was a church that was connected to a college, right? And so my job was to engage and build community with the college students, right? These were people around my age, and people that they wanted me to start Bible studies with and help them grow and walk with God. Because there's a very secular community. Most of them would go out to parties. Most of them would do really inappropriate things on the weekend. And my job was to kind of engage with them and kind of bring them back to the fold. So that was my job. And like I mentioned, the first 6 months, they encouraged me just to go every week to just do Bible studies. Just host a Bible study in the live lobby, and whoever comes, just do a Bible study with them. And I would do that. Like I said, I would do that, and 2, 3 people may come. There were some weeks that no one would come, and then I would build really great relationships. And one thing I really noticed is that they were all about, hanging out. I would go play basketball with them, and they would all come and engage with me. I would go do random events with them, and it would be great. But when it came to Bible study, they would just all flake out, right? They were not interested in that. And I used to wonder to myself, like, hey, is it just the fact that it's the Bible? Is it just the fact that we're reading scripture that causes them not to be interested in this? And I was really questioning that, so I decided to experiment. What I decided to do is like, what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start making some videos, some vlogs. And these vlogs are going to be no more than 4 minutes long. And these vlogs, and for those of you guys who may not know, vlogs is just a video blog, right? It's just a video, 4-minute videos that really deal with the same Bible study topics. But instead of me doing like a 45-minute Bible study, I'm going to do these 4-minute videos touching on the topics, right? Now, this was an idea. I was really excited about this idea, but there was a problem. I went to school to be a pastor. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to create graphics. I didn't even know how to really use social media. And I feel like some of you in here may be able to relate to that struggle. And many times, that struggle stops there. Oh, I don't know how to do this. I went to school for something else, so I'm just not going to do it. But what I decided to do is there was a few things that I did that really allowed me to learn all these skills. And I just want to go through these points real quick. So the first thing I had to realize is that in order to learn these skills, I just simply had to put in the work, right? I was really busy. I was a pastor, and you all are really busy. You have members, you have things to do. However, there's no shortcut, right? Amen. You have to put in the work. What I would do, I would spend all day doing my pastoral duties. And once again, I wasn't married at the time, and so I could make some things work. But anytime I would spend between like usually 6 o'clock to 12 at midnight taking courses online on YouTube, not even paying. They're free. You can go to YouTube, type in, hey, how do you learn how to edit on Final Cut Pro? I purchased Final Cut Pro. It cost me $250. I paid for it myself. It wasn't a church budget. I invested in myself. Paid $250 and went on YouTube every day for about a month and taught myself how to edit. You can learn it. You can learn it. I got a degree in theology. I knew nothing about this. I taught myself how to edit. So I put in the work. I taught myself how to do graphics. I went on YouTube once again. I went on Google. Google and YouTube are your best friends. And I taught myself how to do these things. How to edit, how to create graphics, how to make videos. And one thing I learned from that is, and as pastors, I don't know about you, but as a pastor, it's really hard. You really want to make sure you cross all your T's and dot all your I's. So you really don't want to venture into areas where you're not expert in, because that can cause failure and humiliation. And so, but I learned real quick with using social media, you need to be very prepared for that, because what happened was, I would make my first video. I taught myself how to edit. I taught myself how to do all these things. And I made my first video. And I was really excited. I had spent 30, 40, 50 hours on making this video, right? Editing and learning how to do this. I put the video out. I'm excited. And I get like 2 views, right? Like 2 views. Like imagine as a pastor how long it takes you to prepare for a Bible study. Maybe for you it takes you 15 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe it takes you a few hours, right? And then you do the Bible study, you have 2 people come. And it's like, you know what, that's kind of annoying. But you know, I didn't spend a whole bunch of time doing this. And also, I get to dialogue with these people. I get to engage with these people. But imagine spending 40, 50, 60 hours and spending a month and a half learning this skill and producing this video and get like 2, 5, 10 views. No comments, no engagement. That's it, right? That was very embarrassing. That was very humiliating. And I was very tempted to say that, like, okay, Andrew, you're kidding yourself. This isn't for you. You know, no one else in your industry is doing this, right? None of the other pastors are doing this, so I don't need to do this. Let me just focus on what we've been doing for the last 60 years to do ministry, right? Let me just focus on that. But I couldn't do that. I had to embrace those failures. What I had to learn is, okay, Andrew, of course, this is how social media works. Like, it's a process. You're not going to get hits overnight. You're not going to get that engagement overnight. You have to be consistent. You have to embrace the failure. So I embraced the failure, and once again, another thing I learned is to be consistent. I couldn't just put one video out. I couldn't just learn the skill, put this video out, and that was going to work, right? What I had to realize is like, okay, I need to think long term. I need to have at least one video every other week, right? That was my first goal. So I spent even more hours learning the craft, learning how to speak in front of the camera. Oh, and by the way, I bought a $800 camera, and I bought a $300 mic. Once again, I bought from my own money. I invested in that. And I would make these videos, and sometimes I would spend all Friday making like 3 videos and spending the next few weeks editing them and releasing them every other week. And something happened when I was consistent. When I started to be consistent, I started to get more and more engagement. I started to develop an audience, right? And then another thing I learned through that is, from some feedback, is the importance of being authentic. See, as pastors, many times, and many of you guys aren't pastors, but as pastors, you know, you're many times taught to perform, right? When you're in front of people, you need to be charismatic, you need to put on a face, you need to be excited, etc., etc. But the one thing about social media is that does not translate very well, right? When you go to YouTube, if you guys have kids, if you guys have younger people in your community, a lot of them follow what's called vloggers on YouTube. And one thing that's really interesting, and this is crazy, I have my fiance has a little sister who's 18 now, and man, I feel so old around her because she follows all these YouTubers, and it's crazy because these days the youth would rather, I kid you not, go on YouTube and watch some random guy or random girl walk around their house all day for like 45 minutes than to watch a movie in the theaters. It's crazy, it's weird to me, but that's the reality. These vloggers just walk around and show you what they're doing for the day, and then the kids will watch that. And they will watch that before they would watch some guy talking to the camera and teaching them about something or talking about something. And what you're finding is that young people, youth and young adults, are really embracing authenticity, right? The idea of a human being a personality and showing you their life and engaging with you in a real way, showing you all angles, not this high production type of look into the camera type of way. So what I had to learn from that is like, okay, I used to when I started off, and you know, just take all this with a grain of salt, because I'm not saying you need to try to be that hip, cool youth pastor. Like that's kind of, you know, I learned that the hard way. That's not the move. But I used to be in the camera. I used to wear like suits. I used to wear suits and have a little church background and talk in the camera when I'm trying to talk to these youth and young adults. But I learned real quick that wasn't really the way to engage with these youth and young adults. So what I decided to do is to wear just my normal clothes. I decided to be more authentic. Sometimes I would wear a cap. I would do various different things to show that, like, hey, I'm just a guy who happens to be in love with Jesus Christ, and I want to tell you about who this man is, right? And so these were various different lessons that I learned from just doing this work. And then after I learned these lessons, and I did this for about 6 months, something started to happen. See, I started to get a lot of engagement on my videos. And you see right here on the slide, there's several different videos. And one interesting thing you see is, you see the video way over here. This was an older video, and I started getting really good engagement for it. And also I used clickbait titles, and so they would draw you in, and we would talk about some real things. And so this one is like 2,500 views and engagement, right? Which is really great. That's really, really great. And I continue to be consistent. I continue to engage with them. Continue to talk about relevant, and that's another thing. You know, many times we don't want to meet them where they're at, not only physically on social media, but also spiritually. A lot of times we want to preach. I love prophecy, man. I love talking about prophecy. I love talking about all these big theological ideas in the Bible, but a lot of times the youth and young adults, they're not there yet. They want to learn about practical things that are relevant to their life. So I started to make videos. At this time, the election had just happened, so I started to make videos that had to deal with politics, which could draw you back to the Bible and prophecy. I started to make videos about addictions and struggles that young men and young women may have, about questions they may have, premarital sex, all these different things. And what happened, I started getting more and more engagement, 2,500 to 17,000 to 73,000, 63,000 people watching the content. Think about this as a pastor. You prepare a sermon, a 30-minute, 45-minute sermon, and you have maybe 200 people there, your audience who's hearing that sermon. Imagine creating a 4-minute video. Yeah, it takes time. You have to learn some new skills. You have to do a lot more work, sure. But you drop it and you get 17,000, 73,000, 63,000 people, young adults watching it in one day. This happened in one day. Usually the views just happen one day. One day, one weekend, you drop it on Friday, and in that weekend you're getting all these views. And you're touching on topics that are really relevant to these young people. And so when I started to do this, and you can see all these titles, I would just talk about all these different things that were relevant, and none of these say Seventh-day Adventism, none of these say, Mark of the Beast. In fact, in this video, it's interesting because the title is Stop Praying for the Government. And in this video, I believe I actually start breaking down prophecy, and I actually do talk about the Mark of the Beast. And obviously in the porno video, I talk about my own personal struggle with pornography as a child and as a young man. Once again, being authentic, right? Because once again, as pastors, many times we're taught to be like, we have to be these, people who everyone has to look up to. But on social media, it's kind of backwards. You have to show that you can relate to your audience. So I talked about my own struggle and what the lessons I learned and how you can overcome it too by this walk with Jesus, Christian modesty, Jesus and premarital sex. All these various different topics, and I got all this engagement. And what was incredible was the messages that I got, right? Every week I would get these people messaging me from all around the world, not only the United States, right? All around the world saying like, man, Andrew, this video you made about premarital sex, wow, me and my girlfriend just watched it, man, that was so relevant to us. Here's a follow-up question. I have more questions for you. And what happened was, originally when I made these videos, my goal was to engage with the youth and young adults at my church, right? I'm gonna make these videos, I'm gonna put it out there, and hopefully maybe once a week they can look at these videos. But what started to happen, as you can see, I started to build an audience from all around the world, right? And that's when I knew, okay, this tool, social media, is something to be taken advantage of, right? And I was able to engage and do all these different things. Now, after this happened, God bless the North American Division reached out to me, and I began to get some opportunities to work with them and using social media as well. So the North American Division has realized in the last several years that like, hey, we need to use social media to draw these young people back into church. So there's a platform called the Haystack, which is, like I mentioned, that I work for right now. And right now we focus on creating media content, blogs, short films, all different types of content to engage young people. Also blogs and podcasts, like I mentioned earlier. So all these different ways to engage with youth and young adults. And as a result of us doing that, I want to show you, I'm pretty much running out of time, I want to show you some stats of, just real quick actually, I want to touch on this slide. So I want you to think to yourself, and we're going to be talking about more about Facebook targeting, video series, and sermon highlight clips in the second talk. But as we're waiting for that talk, I guess a few hours from now, I want you to think to yourself and compare this idea of door-to-door invites and ministries, in-house Bible studies, and full sermons on websites. And maybe think to yourself, maybe ask your pastor, if your pastor reflect, and think about how efficient has those methods been. Now, I think they can be efficient. I think they have. My dad was a head elder, he was a lay pastor, and I've seen him do a lot of these things, and it's been great. My question, and kind of my challenge is, in 2019, is spending the time training your church members to be experts in this area, is it as efficient as training yourself and your church members and being experts in these areas, right? And that's the question I'm just throwing out there, right? When you compare door-to-door knocking and invites to learning how to Facebook target an audience, right? You have some evangelistic series coming up, and you can target specific audiences, ages, demographics, and they will all see that advertisement. Which one do you think might be more efficient? In-house Bible studies versus video series. I just showed you my experience with video series. comparing that to kind of in-house Bible studies. Once again, I don't think it's like one or the other, but just kind of asking those questions, okay, should we be investing more time in these other areas? Full sermon on website. A lot of churches have websites, but one thing you'll see, and you can Google this, young people don't go to websites. The only websites they go to is Google, YouTube, and Twitter, and Instagram, and Facebook. They don't go to business and organization websites, right? So if you're not present on those websites, Facebook, Instagram, Google, they're not going to your website. Like, that's a fact, like that's a reality, right? And so asking yourself, okay, is it more efficient for me to make sure I have a really awesome website, have all these full sermons on websites, or invest in learning how to do sermon highlight clips and creating a presence on my social media platforms to have those sermon highlight clips? Once again, I want you to think about that, and we'll talk more about how to do that and the pros and cons in the second talk later today. But finally, I want to show you some stats that I think are really incredible. So a few months ago, I took a screenshot of the stats for the page, the Haystack page, right? I just want you to check out some of this. So in just 1 month, we had over 2,000 likes, and that's followers, likes on a page. We released a few videos and had over 2 million people reached in our video. Think about that. 2 million people? Off of just 2 videos? It's incredible, right? You can look at some of the other stats. The video views on a few of the videos. You can look at the page engagements. Those are people who not only watch the videos and get reached by the videos, but actually come to the page, send messages, send comments, engage. Over 100,000 people doing that. You know, where do you see these numbers, right? And so this is just one screenshot. This was months ago, right? And we've only grown more and more from there. And so my goal, my mission from this first talk was just to establish, and I wasn't here yesterday, so you guys may have already had a lot of healthy conversation about this, but just really to establish the power of social media. And how in the last 100, 200 years, when we, as Adventist Christian people, when we've seen mediums take off, we have taken advantage of them. And I feel like we've been a little slow when it comes to social media. And I want to challenge each and every one of us to like, hey, listen, put in the work. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, what your position, put in the work to learn the skills that are needed to really use this tool. Because when you put in the work and put in the time, God, as you can see, can do some incredible things through that work. And so that's kind of my thesis for this first talk. But real quick, are there any questions? Anything that I said was a little confusing? Any questions right off the back of that? I know I'm pretty much out of time, but I just want to leave. I think I have 2 minutes. And so, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
My question is this, and I'm sure there are others here who might benefit from this, is that do you have hands-on as to how we should really set the settings of our Facebook, Twitter, these social media accounts, right? Because you're starting out new, you might not know exactly what settings you need to use, but that will benefit you, your church. Because I don't know all this, what some of these things really mean, and having no experience with them.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you guys can let me know if this would be helpful. Would it be helpful if in the second presentation I do some demos on how to use some of the social media, how to target audiences, et cetera, et cetera? I can definitely do that. I'll demonstrate that. Also, I'll make this point. The way I learned, once again, wasn't through school. It was from Google. It was from YouTube. So I would definitely want to talk more about that. But even after today, if you have questions, I'm telling you, Google has everything. YouTube has everything. But great question. Thank you so much for that. Okay.
Well, I have. Fantastic piece. Love it.
Yes, sir.
The question I have is, I'll tell you what I have been struggling with, being in the media business, all aspects of it in the last, I would say more of a focus for me in the last 5, 8 years. I'm perceiving that as Seventh-day Adventists, Christians, some of us are struggling with what our message is.
Well,
Then, you know, when we get in our community, we're fine with each other because we're all, you know,
amen.
same color, same whatever. So there's no struggle with that. I think there are ministry groups, churches, maybe even pastors that are not sure about what their message is to the world. Now, it's easy for us to say, well, there's sin in the world, we need Jesus, you know, second coming, whatever. But I think from people to people, I think some of our churches and some of our groups struggle with what is our message. You know, it was interesting one time, you know, we had a Message magazine promotion, which, by the way, is an awesome periodical if you really want to reach outside of the Adventist walls. But I wore a hat that said Message on it, you know. Message magazine, Message. So I went to a convenience store one time, and the lady's checking me out, and she looks at my hat, and she says, Message. She says, oh, what's the message? Or what is message? And that's what kind of, it clicked, you know. Now, I know I'm checking out, you know, I don't have time to give a Bible study. But she said, well, it says message, so what is the message? And I think that's the question I'm asking. Do we know what our message is?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer to that particular question. I mean, I think that...
No, I mean in the context of how you presented it. Because, see, you have a handle on how to, you know who you're reaching, you know the language, you know how to get the message across, because you're very in tune with the listener or the viewer.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure enough of us know that. We've not invested into that part so that our message can get
That's a good point. What I did, what I showed you the slide a moment ago about the way I even titled what I wore, the background I had, the way I even titled my subjects, that was all due to doing a lot of research on YouTube and on Facebook, looking at other bloggers, because there's a lot of them out there, right? So I look at other bloggers, other friends I know who are doing this, and learn from them, oh, okay, you know, this is how you package the message of the gospel. Oh, okay, I need to make sure my title stands out. I can't just say the 3 angels message. I just can't say the mark of the beast. Like, that's not going to get any clicks. I need to make sure it stands out. I need to make sure I have this type of background. And so, once again, I think if your goal was as a pastor, doesn't matter who you are, hey, I want to make some short videos to kind of just break down the various different series and topics. Go to YouTube and type in about those topics, and you'll find several other pastors and young people and bloggers who are doing the same thing. Learn from them and take it and make it your own. Since I was Adventist, most of the people I looked at were like, you know, just evangelicals, right? They weren't Adventists. But what was great is that I saw how they did their thing. I was able to take some of the good, ignore some of the, you know, and add my own Adventist take on it. So once again, when I talk about stop praying for the government, you know, it's a clickbaity title, like, oh, okay, what does this guy have to say? But then I'm able, and I don't think in any of these videos I say Adventism or Seventh-day Adventism. Now, I'm not saying that was the right thing to do. It's just I was trying to target a wider audience and just bring more biblical truth and not, you know, make it just an Adventist audience. But I was able to talk about all of the Adventist doctrines really in all my videos without actually, you know, even letter to the church folks, Laodicea, talking about, like, all of them. I was able to talk about all these topics without actually saying Adventism. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but from my experience, I just went to YouTube and just saw how other people was packaging the message, and from that, I was able to learn from and do the same. Once again, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my answer.
No, I think it addresses the prep side and knowledgeable side.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know, sometimes I just wonder. Because, you know, when you become a Seventh-day Adventist, first of all, you know, it's pounded in your head. You have the truth, the only truth. We're the remnant church. Nobody else is going to heaven. The whole thing. And we can go through our Christian experience thinking we're it.
Yeah.
And nobody else has what we have. And then when we try to share that with others, we do it with that tone. And what you've done is outstanding, because the link-based title, I mean, that's a technique everybody's using. You know, I've been caught that way many times. But I don't know, maybe my question is too obscure. I don't know if anyone's wondering, you know, what are you talking about? I know the message. I just don't know if, first of all, there doesn't seem to be an excitement about our message. We're not sometimes excited about what we know.
Like the posture as to which
we have all this great knowledge, and then we're satisfied. Oh, you know, I have the spirit of prophecy. I studied the Bible 5 times in 8 languages.
This whole arrogance,
you know, after a while, you just kind of get in your cocoon.
Yeah.
And when it's time to reach out, you reach out with that attitude, and you're wondering why people are bristling, stepping back. It's like, whoa, I don't know if I'm going to be a part of this.
Yes, ma'am.
Growing up as an Adventist all my life, not fully understanding what Adventism actually was. You would go to church because it was tradition, but until you really have a relationship with God, and until you really understand and ask God to help you to discern the scriptures, you know you're not going to be the only one going to heaven. John said he saw a number that no one can number. We want to be in that 144,000 hopefully, but if we're not, we know that there's so many people that are not going to be Adventists making it into the kingdom.
Amen.
You have to have a personal relationship with God and ask for the Holy Spirit every day to dwell in your heart. And He would open your eyes to see that there's going to be people in all religions that's going to be lackadaisical. We live in the Laodicean time, so you're going to see this, but until you personally see and ask God to help you see that this journey is not about looking at what we are as a people, but looking in the mirror, getting yourself ready, because that's all it's going to take.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to say is that I'm looking at this, and I think he answered the question, because you took the Adventist message, compressed it into these videos, and answered people who are seeking salvation. And that's what we should be doing. But it didn't change who you were or what you believe. And the idea of using the potluck story, I was wondering, that the other data that you showed, was that from the potluck story?
So
The next slide that you had.
The next slide is actually from the haystack. So I did the potluck, and I didn't mention this, I ended up growing to 47,000 followers, and then I left the potluck and became the director of the haystack, and using the analytics from the haystack when I took it over.
And what I'm looking at is this. You didn't put Seventh-day Adventists in there. And I'm looking at the views that you got, but yet the message you preach hasn't changed, but the method has.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to say, I'm glad he didn't put Adventists in those videos, because I teach sociology, and Adventism is in our book as a cult.
I know we're probably not going to solve this question, but I think you helped to unearth what I'm trying to say. You did not say Seventh-day Adventism.
Yes.
If our goal, if our message is salvation, it shouldn't be Seventh-day Adventism. It should be salvation first, and then maybe a Seventh-day Adventist. That's all I'm saying. Sometimes we hit the public with, we got it. Nobody has it, down but us. The Seventh-day Adventist. You want to know why we're Seventh-day? It's the Seventh Day. We do that. We drill it and we push people away instead of saying, "I care about you. I care about the same issues you care about in society, and I'm going to give you a biblical perspective on that." Then the further inquiry will say, "What are you, a Baptist? What are you?" So, when people ask me that don't know me, they say, "What are you, Baptist?" I said, "No, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but I'm a Christian first. I'm a follower of Christ." So that's what you're doing here, and I think we need to talk more about that approach, because with those views and those analytics, that's fantastic. Because of your approach.
Sure.
I have a question. Mike, wait for the mic, please.
She's not using a preaching board.
My question is, when you were the potluck, what were the analytics in your pew? How did your church, your physical church grow? What was the growth in your physical church? How many baptisms or members or new whatever did you get from the potluck?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started doing the potluck, it was pretty strange because these young adults would see me every day and they'd be like, oh, that's Pastor Andrew. Then I started doing the potluck and I forgot the term. But it's the idea of when you see someone else who is being followed by someone else, you want to follow that person. I forgot the term. There's a term, but there's a psychology behind it, right? Maybe someone can help me out. But like, when they start seeing me make these videos and saw that other people who didn't grow up Adventists, because these kids grew up Adventists, were engaging with the content and interested, they were like, I must be dumb. Must be good content. Let me start asking Pastor Andrew about this. Hey, can you come to my dorm room? Hey, when's your next Bible study? And I would start having Bible studies in the dorm, and it would start to grow more and more because a lot of times these Adventist kids, they grew up hearing this all the time, and so they don't really value it. But once they see all these other young people coming, running, and valuing it, they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm right here. Let me just start engaging with it. So I end up engaging with, at the school, I should say my young adult group, there was about 100, 150 young adults or whatnot. I left, soon after, but by the time I started doing the videos, it went from having like 3-4 people engaging with Bible studies to about 45, 50 people engaging with Bible studies. It came to the point where I couldn't really even do group Bible studies. I had to do different sections when I would go to people's dorm and we were all gathered together in different groups and do Bible studies. And I once again, I didn't stay there very long. After about a year, I left. But I imagine if I would have stayed there and continued to do it, it would just kept growing. Because that's how we as young adults function. Like, we don't like to follow ideas or people that don't have any traction, or my friends aren't following them. But once we see that kind of dynamic, and also there's a respect level. Like, they're like, oh, Andrew's making these videos, he's putting in this work. I value that. Like, there must be something to this. Like, anyone can just tell me I need to read the Bible, but he's actually putting in this work, so I want to do that. So it did grow. It did grow quite a bit.
So then after you left, then it died.
That's a good question. I can't really speak to that. There are some incredible pastors who work there, who follow some other methods, who are doing some great things, and I think there is growth. But to be honest with you, I can't really speak to that much because I left and I haven't really been there since.
Allow me to say something. This really takes me back. Watching these numbers, first of all, there was no television. There was all this stuff didn't exist. Remember the name E.E. Cleveland?
Yes. I
remember as a kid growing up, E.E. Cleveland would go in and put up a billboard. And all he said was, he's coming. He's coming. 2 months out. He's coming. A month out. He's almost here. 2 weeks out. 2 weeks. He'll be right here on such and such a corner. 2 weeks came, the big tent was up, y'all. E.E. Cleveland came in and blew the place out. Baptized 200-300 people from just a slogan. That's what this is. Please excuse me, but that's what that hit me in the head just now when you said that. Because I remember that just like it was yesterday. I remember when my dad was doing the same thing, and I had to crawl underneath the tent to hook it together, but then to raise it with a mule. It's the same kind of thing. So when we recognize that things, let's put it like this, from a communication standpoint, sometimes words subliminally take you into something that you never expected. Okay? Please understand that semantics also make a big difference as to how you will not accept a topic. So we as Adventists have to understand, we've got to get to the point where we recognize that we are not the saving grace, God is.
Amen.
And when we recognize that, the rest of the world will say, Arsenio, You get my point?
Yes,
Because
sir.
people recognize that we are definitely different, and what we are bringing to the fore makes sense. But guess what? A whole lot of other folks sound like us too. As a matter of fact, they're getting closer and closer to us so that you can't skew one from the other. So we just have to recognize what's going on. I think if we do that, and then we can get together with our pastors so that we can understand collectively where it is we are trying to go. It's not a collective goal, not your goal and my goal. Collectively together, I think it'll make a whole lot of difference.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Well, I'm definitely over my time, and I might be getting in big trouble for that. So I'll conclude with saying that this is great, and we're gonna have part 2 at 2 o'clock, so in a few hours. And so if you have any questions, I want to be able to do some demonstrations and talk more about how to practically use social media and do some of the things that God has allowed me to do. So if you have any questions, make sure to bring those questions. This has been great. I really have loved this time. And yeah, that's all the time I have. So thank you.
Thank you. Now we have the case for social media, and he's going to give us some tools a little later about how we can be just as effective, if not more effective than he's been. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to take a brief break. Just give us time to transition for our next presenter, Bill Fitch. And before we do that, I hear that there's someone who has a birthday today. There is?